The story kicked off in a Beijing dojo, where the air was thick with discipline and quiet intensity. Here, a teenager named Li Fong moved with a focused grace, each motion a testament to his rigorous training under the watchful eye of his uncle, Han. The solemn atmosphere of the dojo was a reflection of a deep-seated family tragedy. Li's brother Bo had been killed some time ago, stabbed by a sore loser after a martial arts tournament, a brutal act that had haunted their family ever since. This fragile peace was shattered by the arrival of Li's mother, Hannah. She informed Han that she was moving to America for her career as a doctor, and she was taking Li with her. Han suggested she discuss it with the boy, but Hannah opted for a less diplomatic approach. She laid down an ultimatum for her son, to move with her or be cut off financially. Backed into a corner, Li had no choice but to abandon his home and follow his mother's orders. Touching down in New York City was a culture shock of epic proportions. Hannah's success afforded them a swanky high-rise apartment, but the luxury felt cold and alien to Li. He ventured out for a slice of pizza and got his first taste of American hospitality, which turned out to be a dose of ridicule from the pizzeria owner, a man named Victor, who mocked his geeky appearance. The awkward moment was saved by the owner's daughter, Mia, who immediately called out her dad for being a jerk. She showed Li a kindness that stood in stark contrast to her father's rudeness and the city's overwhelming indifference, offering a small glimmer of warmth in this strange new world. The following days were a blur of adjustment for Li as he started his first semester at a top university, navigating a social scene that couldn't have been more different from what he had known in Beijing. His path crossed with Mia's again when he saw her struggling with a stack of pizza boxes and rushed to help after she dropped them. This simple act of kindness sparked a real conversation, and when Mia had to leave for her deliveries, Li offered to tag along. As they walked, they passed a karate dojo teeming with students. Mia asked if he knew how to fight, but Li quickly lied, claiming he knew nothing, bearing the truth of his kung fu skills deep down. Their bond solidified later when they stopped at a Chinese shop. When Mia came up short on cash, Li stepped in, haggling with the cashier in fluent Mandarin and scoring a massive discount. Thrilled and grateful, Mia promised to repay him with a proper tour of New York City. True to her word, Mia took Li on a whirlwind tour of the city on her scooter the next day. The freewheeling adventure came to a sputtering halt when the scooter broke down, forcing them to haul it onto a train for the trip home. On the train, their luck got worse. They were approached by a group of aggressive teens led by Connor, a karate champion who also happened to be Mia's arrogant ex-boyfriend. He tried to pressure Mia into getting back with him, and Li quietly stepped in, asking him to back off. Connor, refusing to be challenged, threw a quick, sharp punch right at Li's face. Li just took it, absorbing the blow without even flinching to fight back. Later, as they walked home, Mia apologized for the whole incident, but Li shrugged it off. It was then revealed that his pacifism wasn't a weakness. It was a conscious choice, a solemn promise he had made to his mother that he wouldn't get into any fights after moving to America. Mia took Li straight to her pizza shop to get his swollen eye looked after. Once they arrived, Victor, her father, sprang into action with a surprising level of skill. He expertly treated the bruise and even applied a bit of makeup to hide the damage from Li's mother. While he worked, Li couldn't help but ask how a pizza shop owner knew so much about treating fight injuries. Victor explained that before he was slinging dough, he was a professional boxer. And back then, bruises like Li's were just part of his everyday routine. The revelation added a whole new, unexpected layer to the gruff man Li had just met. Later that night, while tidying his room, Li stumbled upon a photograph of his brother, Bo, gone 2 years now. The image sent him spiraling back into a memory of his late brother, who had been a kung fu champion himself. He remembered a training session where Bo tried to teach him a devastatingly powerful spinning kick, a move he called the dragon kick. But the technique was incredibly difficult, and no matter how hard he tried, Li could never pull it off. The next morning, with the bruise on his eye faded, Li headed to campus only to be confronted by Connor, who, as it turned out, was a student at the same university. Connor started bullying him again, but this time, something inside Li snapped. The promise to his mother was forgotten in a wave of anger, and he challenged Connor to a proper duel. Connor, arrogant and sure of an easy win, accepted immediately. But to his shock, the fight was anything but easy. Li was surprisingly skilled, holding his own and matching the karate champion blow for blow. They were on equal ground, a fact that clearly infuriated Connor. In the heat of the battle, Lee desperately tried to unleash the dragon kick his brother had taught him, but he still hadn't mastered it. The move failed spectacularly, leaving him wide open for a counterattack. Connor seized the opportunity and beat him down just as several lecturers arrived to break up the fight, leaving Lee with the bitter taste of defeat. That evening, Lee was still stewing over his loss, replaying the fight in his head. He happened to spot Mia's scooter, the one that had broken down on their date, and decided to channel his frustration into something productive by fixing it for her. He headed to the alley behind the pizza shop, but as he arrived, he walked right into a much more serious stuff. 4 mean-looking thugs were ganging up on Victor, roughing him up over some debt. Seeing this, Lee didn't hesitate for a second. He launched himself into the fray, and what followed was a masterclass in controlled violence. Despite being outnumbered, Lee moved like a phantom, effortlessly dodging their clumsy swings and dismantling them one by one with precise, powerful strikes. To him, these 4 goons were nothing but bugs to be swatted away. After Lee had successfully neutralized the threat, Victor, still nursing his wounds, could only stare in utter amazement. The nerdy kid he had misjudged was, in fact, a stone-cold kung fu fighter. Once he caught his breath, Victor explained the whole mess. The thugs were enforcers for a local mafia boss named O'Shea, to whom he was deeply in debt. For months, O'Shea had been sending his men to collect, always resorting to violence. Victor's only shot at clearing the debt was to enter and win an illegal boxing match held every Saturday night. Desperate, he begged Lee to teach him some kung fu moves, anything that could give him an edge in the ring. Bound by tradition, Lee initially refused, explaining that his art wasn't something he could just teach to anyone, especially not on a whim. Haunted by Victor's plea, Lee reached out to the one person whose wisdom he trusted above all, his uncle, Han. He called him back in Beijing and explained the situation, asking for permission to train his new friend. Han gave his blessing, with one condition, that the reason for teaching was just and for a good purpose. With his uncle's approval clearing his conscience, Lee returned to the pizza shop the next day, ready to begin Victor's training. They started practicing right then and there, but their session was abruptly cut short when Mia walked in. She was furious, scolding both of them for even thinking about dragging Victor back into the violent world of boxing. Forced to come clean, Victor explained everything about his debt to O'Shea and swore that this one fight would be his last. After he paid what he owed, he would be done for good. Hearing the desperation in her father's voice, Mia reluctantly gave her consent, paving the way for the dangerous fight ahead. For days, Lee and Victor were locked in a serious training regimen. Lee poured everything he knew into the sessions, even propping up a photo of his uncle, Han, as a source of motivation and a reminder of true form. They trained wherever and whenever they could find a spare moment, turning the pizzeria's back alley into their personal dojo. Victor's determination was ironclad. He pushed his body to its absolute limit, absorbing every lesson with a grit that impressed his young teacher. During a quiet moment between sessions, Victor noticed Lee looking down and asked him what was wrong. The question opened a floodgate of emotion, and Lee finally shared the full traumatic story of his brother's death. He recounted how, after a tournament victory back in China, Bo's opponent had ambushed them. The man, unable to accept defeat, pulled a knife and stabbed his brother. Lee confessed the part that haunted him the most was that he had been completely frozen by fear, too shocked and scared to do anything to help. Victor listened patiently, and like a seasoned cornerman, told Lee he had to find a way to move on, because drowning in that kind of sadness would never lead to anything good. When Saturday night finally rolled around, the air was thick with tension. It was time for the illegal boxing match that held the key to Victor's freedom from O'Shea's debt. Lee and Mia stood by his side in the grimy, smoke-filled arena, their faces a mixture of hope and anxiety as Victor warmed up. When his name was called, Victor entered the ring, a quiet confidence radiating from him, eager to test out the kung fu techniques Lee had taught him. The first round was a thing of beauty. Victor dominated his opponent, a hulking brawler from O'Shea's stable, using fluid movements and precise strikes that left the crowd stunned. But his success was short-lived. In the second round, O'Shea, seeing his money on the line, ordered his fighter to use dirty tactics. A cowardly, illegal blow caught Victor off guard, leaving him with a serious head injury and ending the fight instantly. The dream of a quick victory vanished as he was rushed to the hospital. In a cruel twist of fate, The doctor who ended up treating Victor in the ER was none other than Lee's mother, Hannah. The incident led to a severe scolding for Lee, as his mother tore into him for getting involved in something so dangerous and illegal. When Lee got home that night, he was a wreck. Consumed by a storm of frustration and guilt, he felt responsible for Victor's injuries, believing Kung Fu had once again led someone he cared about to harm. It was the memory of his brother all over again. In that moment, he decided he was done. He renounced the world of martial arts entirely, determined to forget every Kung Fu move he ever learned. In a final decisive act of self-exile, he blocked his Uncle Han's number, severing his last connection to the life he was leaving behind. 5 days later, Lee was trying to force a sense of normalcy, returning home after a long day on campus. As he entered his place, his instincts screamed that something was wrong. He wasn't alone. He moved cautiously through the rooms, checking every corner until the intruder revealed himself with a surprise attack. It was Han. His uncle had come all the way from Beijing, worried sick when he couldn't reach his nephew. After Hannah arrived home, the three of them sat down for a tense dinner. Han learned the full story of the illegal fight and why Lee had sworn off Kung Fu, blaming the art for Victor's hospitalization. Lee's pain and disillusionment were laid bare for his uncle to see. The next morning, Han woke Lee early, insisting they visit Victor in the hospital. Lee refused at first, terrified to face not only Victor, but also a rightfully furious Mia. Han's gentle but firm insistence won out, and Lee reluctantly went along. Just as he'd feared, Mia gave him an icy glare before leaving the room. Victor, however, showed nothing but grace. He didn't blame Lee in the slightest for what had happened. This was the opening Han needed. He asked if there were any bigger, more official tournaments in the city. Victor told them about the prestigious Five Boroughs tournament. It was a long shot, especially now, but the idea hung in the air. Seeing that Victor could no longer compete, Han announced a new plan. Lee would enter the tournament in his place. Later, Lee complained, adamant that he didn't want to fight in any more tournaments, but Han calmly and logically laid out the stakes. This wasn't about fighting for ego, it was about honor. After Victor's rigged defeat, the reputation of Kung Fu in the city was in the gutter. It was up to them, he argued, to restore its good name. Furthermore, he proposed that if Lee won, all the prize money would be given to Victor, not only to pay off his debt to O'Shea, but also as compensation for everything he had endured. Suddenly, the fight had a new meaning. It wasn't about anger or revenge anymore. It was about loyalty, friendship, and redemption. With a clear purpose finally in front of him, Lee agreed to compete. The tournament was only 10 days away. With a new plan in motion, Han paid a visit to a local karate dojo owned by an old acquaintance, a man named Daniel. Their connection ran deep. Han had been good friends with Daniel's late father. Han laid out his purpose. He needed Daniel to help train his nephew Lee for the upcoming Five Boroughs tournament. Daniel was initially hesitant, questioning why Han, a kung fu master in his own right, wouldn't just train the boy himself. Han then revealed his ambitious strategy. He planned to take part in the training as well, combining his kung fu expertise with Daniel's karate to forge a unique hybrid fighting style for Lee. The goal was to make Lee completely unpredictable and dramatically crank up his chances of winning. Intrigued by this innovative approach and the challenge it presented, Daniel agreed to the alliance, setting the stage for an unprecedented collaboration between two masters. The next day, the intense training began. Han pushed Lee with rigorous kung fu drills, and soon after, Daniel joined in, adding the sharp, powerful techniques of karate to the mix. For days on end, Lee was put through the ringer, his body and mind shaped by the dual philosophies of his two masters. Under their expert guidance, he began to master a series of incredible combination moves that blended the fluidity of one art with the hard-hitting impact of the other. One evening, after a grueling session, Lee confided in Han about two things that were still weighing on him. First, he was desperate to fix his relationship with Mia, who was still understandably angry with him. Second, he wanted his mother's blessing to compete, feeling that he couldn't give it his all without her full support. Han, ever the wise mentor, offered him a solution for reconnecting with Mia and promised he would personally try to persuade Hannah to get on board. Following his uncle's advice, Lee made a bold romantic gesture and ordered pizza online from Mia's shop. When she arrived to deliver it, she was surprised to find Lee waiting with a date invitation. He sincerely apologized for his role in the incident that hurt her father and promised to make everything right. Mia, who knew deep down that the disaster wasn't truly Lee's fault, accepted his apology, and the tension between them melted away. The two grew closer in that moment, their friendship blossoming into something more. The good news kept coming. When Lee got home that night, his mother Hannah told him she would permit him to fight in the tournament, asking only that he be careful. It was clear that Han's quiet conversation with her had worked wonders, clearing the final emotional obstacle from Lee's path. The days flew by in a blur of non-stop training, and soon only one day remained before the tournament. Han and Daniel decided it was time for the final lesson. They focused all their energy on helping Lee finally perfect the one move that had always eluded him, the dragon kick his brother had tried to teach him. The two masters analyzed the technique, making slight modifications to its execution, making it both easier for Lee to perform and harder for an opponent to anticipate. The tournament finally began, and the stakes were immediately raised when Lee saw that Connor, his arch nemesis, was also competing. The brackets were set in a way that the only path for them to face each other was in the final round, setting them on an inevitable collision course. Throughout the preliminary rounds, both Lee and Connor dominated their opponents, but Connor's jealousy got the best of him. He tried to cheat by having his friends ambush Lee after the match, but Han and Daniel were there, easily fending off the attack and ensuring their student was protected. In the end, fate delivered what everyone was waiting for. Lee advanced to the final to face Connor. The final match arrived 3 days later. The arena was electric. Before the fight, Hannah gave her son words of encouragement, her presence a source of immense strength for him. Mia and Victor were also there, with Victor, fresh out of the hospital, supporting him. The match began, and it was a brutal back-and-forth war. Connor, relentless and aggressive, managed to land a hard kick to Lee's shoulder, nearly taking him out of the fight. But as Lee staggered, he looked to the crowd and saw the faces of his mother and friends. Drawing on their support, he found a second wind and rose to his feet, ready to continue. Seizing his moment, Lee unleashed the modified dragon kick. It was flawless. The kick connected with such force that it sent Connor flying across the mat, earning Lee the decisive point and the championship. But, blinded by rage, Connor tried one last dishonorable attack from behind. Lee calmly sidestepped it and pinned him to the ground, ending the rivalry once and for all. The following day, a joyful celebration was held at Victor's Pizzeria. True to his word, Lee handed over the entire tournament prize purse to Victor, more than enough money to finally pay off his debt to O'Shea and secure his freedom. The victory was more than just a personal triumph. As news of his incredible win spread, it sparked a newfound respect and appreciation for the art of kung fu across the city. Lee had not only saved his friend, but he had also honored his family, his masters, and his culture.